Okay, we're going to look at some patterns here. We're looking for powers of I. And what's the definition of I again? Okay, I is equal to square root of -1. Good. So I to the 1 is just the square root of -1, and the simplest way to write it is I. Okay? What about I squared? I squared is, now, if I is equal to the square root of 1, then that's the square root of -1 squared. What happens if I square a square root? It cancels it, doesn't it? So that would cancel the square root, and what would my answer be? -1. How about that? I squared, that's an important one to remember. I squared is equal to -1, always. Anytime, and we're going to do some stuff soon where we're adding, subtracting, and multiplying complex numbers. And so when you end up multiplying complex numbers and you get an I squared, what do you replace it with? -1, right? Okay, what about I cubed? Now I'm going to review just a couple quick properties of exponents that are going to be useful to us here. Tell me real quick, and you'll remember this from Algebra 2, and I think we've even talked about it this year. X squared times x cubed equals what? X to the 5th, because our rule is if I multiply like bases, what do I do to the exponents? You add the exponents, good. Okay, what if I take a power to a power? What if I have like x cubed squared? You multiply. Good. If you take a power to a power, you multiply the exponents, and I get x to the 6th. Okay, why do I bring that up? Well, what would be a tricky way to figure out what I cubed is equal to? So how could I take, I know what I to the 1 is, and I know what I squared is. How could I do something tricky using that information that I already have up here to determine what I cubed is?
The square root of -I cubed.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's not helping me much. How about if I use this property right here? If I use that property,
You multiply them.
multiply, what do you mean by them? The two things up here, right? Okay, good. So if I multiply I squared times I to the 1, that's I cubed, isn't it? Well, what's I squared equal to? -1. So I get -1 times I, which is just what? 2. -I. Okay? So I cubed is always -I. Okay. What's a tricky way that I could determine the value of I to the 4th? To the 2nd. Why not? I could do I squared, couldn't I? Because that would be I to the 2 times 2, which is 4 power. Well, I squared is what? -1. So I'm squaring -1, which is what? What's -1 squared? 1. So while we're on the topic, if I take -1 to an even power, any even power, what am I going to get? If I take -1 to an even number, +1, aren't I? Right? Because if I'm taking it to an even power, I'm going to be able to multiply the -1s in pairs. And what is -1 to the 16th? It's just -1 times itself 16 times. So isn't that 8 pairs of 2?
Yes.
Each pair of 2 -1s is going to make a +1, right? So an even power of a negative number in general is positive. An odd power of a negative number is negative, because there's going to be one leftover extra that's not going to be paired up. It's going to stay negative, isn't it? Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now what about I to the 5th? What could I do there? You could do I to the 2nd and I to the 3rd. Which of these 4 numbers up here would be the easiest one to use? I to the 4th. I to the 4th is equal to 1, isn't it, right? So why not write I to the 5th as I to the 4th times I to the 1? What's I to the 4th? 1. 1 times I to the 1. Well, that's just equal to I. What do you know? I got the same thing there that I got there. Okay, what about I to the 6th?
You got -1.
I'm gonna get I to the 4th times I squared, and I to the 4th is equal to 1, and I squared equals -1, right? So what do you know? I get a -1. Is that an accident? That I got the same thing there that I got there? No, right? It's not, because I'm multiplying, in each case, I'm multiplying I to the 4th times that power of I. And I to the 4th is just 1, right? Same thing's gonna happen here. I to the 7th is gonna be I to the 4th times I cubed, which is 1 times, and there you go, 1 times -I, so that's -I. And then finally, we get down to I to the 8th. Well, probably the easiest way to do that would be I to the 4th what? Times I to the 4th. Or I could just say I to the 4th squared, right? And that's just gonna give me 1 squared, which is 1. So let me ask you this then, if I were to keep going, and I made another column of 4 that went I to the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
I -1,
I'm gonna get the same things, aren't I? Right? Wouldn't you agree? That, in fact, I to the 4th, and I to the 8th, and I to the 12th, and I to the 16th, those are all gonna be equal to 1, aren't they? How come?
Because they're, what's the word?
They're multiples.
Multiple there.
They're multiples of 4, aren't they? Right? So I to any power that's a multiple of 4 is just gonna end up being I to the 4th to some power, right? If it's the second multiple, it's gonna be 2. If it's the third multiple, like 12, it's gonna be I to the 4th cubed. If it's the 5th, if it's I to the 20th, I'm gonna get I to the 4th to the 5th, right? So every time, I'm guaranteed, when I get to a multiple of 4, power of I, I'm getting 1. So then how could I do something like I to the 15th? How could I do I to the 15th? Does 4 go into 15?
Big number back.
I mean, does 4 go into 15 evenly?
No, or
It doesn't, right? It doesn't go into 15, but what would be the next number before 15 that's a multiple of 4? Before.
8.
Okay, well, meaning 12, right? Okay, I mean, 3 times 4 is 12. So I could just write this as I to the 12th times, what would be the remainder? The third, right? Because 12 plus 3 is 15. Well, what's I to the 12th guaranteed to be equal to? 12 is a multiple of 4. So any is going to equal 1, isn't it? Right? So that's going to give me a 1. So I'm going to get 1 times I cubed. And I cubed, if we know these first 4 powers of I, we can answer I could give you any conceivable number, I to any positive, any whole number power. And you can tell me what the result is, right? So I know I cubed is -I. And so my answer is 1 times -I, which is -I. If you're still wondering how I got 1 here, I to the 12th is just I to the 4th cubed, right? And I to the 4th is 1, and 1 to any power is what? 1. Yeah. See how that works?
Yeah.
Okay? Try that one. Everybody grab one of those boards if you don't have one, and try I to the 62.
Can we just do it on
It's easier just to use those things. Just
Why do you have